Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Chamber TV. Today is episode number 101. Happy New Year to everybody. It's great to have a live audience with us once again today. We are live on Facebook, we are live on Twitter, and we are live on YouTube. And we are especially thrilled to welcome back to Chamber TV one of our favorite presenters, and that's Lisa Griffith of Griffith Productivity Solutions. This is your fourth visit on Chamber TV. Lisa, it's so great to have you back. And
Thank you.
I have to tell you, you are among our very favorite guests, and certainly among the favorite guests of our viewers, our listeners, our watchers, etc. You've been with us multiple times, and we're excited to talk to you again today with the advent of the new year about a subject that certainly all of us are thinking about. And beyond resolutions, it's the secret sauce of getting those fresh restarts done, actually, and rebooting, actually getting that done. And that's the topic of, being productive and managing your time well. So let's get right into it. I'm so excited to hear what you have to say today.
Well, thank you, Laurie. I'm really happy to be here. I get to talk about my favorite stuff when I come here to the chamber, and I hope that I can live up to the expectations. I hope everybody walks away today with a little something. I'm Lisa Griffith. I'm a business organizing and productivity consultant and a speaker, and I specialize in helping people clear the clutter from their desks and their files and their inboxes and their calendars and their brains. And today I'm going to talk about my top 5 favorite time management tips. These are things that I speak about often to larger groups, but also with my clients, and I use all of them myself. So I hope that something today will help you get that energy for the new year going. Now, it's New Year's resolution time, right? So what happens every year? What happens every year? They have done studies that show that the top 3 resolutions every year are related to something like get thin, get fit, get organized, right? Or some iteration of one of those 3. And all of those resolutions are related to good time management, because ain't nothing going to happen, ain't nothing going to change in your life unless you put some time and energy towards it. So today, I'm hoping to get you started so that you won't be this guy next year. So, time is something that we all get the same amount of. And I like to say to my clients, time and space are both finite. I think there's a great quote on the next slide from Albert Einstein, I think it is. Yeah, Thomas Edison, sorry, the other inventor. It's the only resource we have, time, that we can't get more of, we can't buy more of it, and we can't get it back once it's gone. When I'm working with a client in their office and we are trying to find space for, say, more papers in a filing cabinet or more books up on a shelf. And sometimes we do have to come to the conclusion that the space you have here is finite. There is only so much you can fit into this space. We have to do that when it comes to the places where we live as well as the places where we work. But over the years, it's become apparent to me that space doesn't really have to be finite if you have enough money. Because if you have enough money, you can buy yourself more space, right? You can rent a storage unit, you can rent a bigger office, you can buy a bigger house, but time is indeed finite. We all get the same amount. We get, 24/7, 365, we all get the same. So hopefully today, I'm going to help you find some ways to make the most out of what we're all given and what we don't want to waste. So my first tip for good time management is what I call tackle the worst first. And this concept was written about by Brian Tracy in his book, Eat That Frog. It's a book about time management. It's been around a while. It's a great book. And he called his book Eat That Frog because he based it on a quote from Mark Twain. And Mark Twain said, "Eat a live frog first thing in the morning, and nothing worse will happen to you for the rest of the day." And I love that quote because if you think about it, it's true. And what Tracy is talking about when he's talking about the ugly frog, eat that frog, is your most difficult brain requiring, thought requiring task, okay, or project. And tackle it first means really tackle it when your focus is best. I probably should have called this tackle the worst best, but tackle the worst first just sounded better. I want you to think about when you are approaching something that's going to require a lot of your focus that might be difficult, to do it when you are at your most productive time of the day. I'm sure you've all heard the expression morning lark and night owl. Those of us whose brains really are functioning at their highest first thing in the morning versus those of us who might kind of get their motor going later in the day or even late at night. I happen to be one of those people who gets there. I get up early, but I would never schedule anything that takes a huge amount of focus and concentration for the top part of the day, because my brain really is at its best. It's really cooking at its most creative later in the day. And I want you to think about tackling your big, ugly, slimy frog when your productivity, when your brain is at its best. There's a lot of stuff out there that says, oh, all the people that get up early in the morning are the most productive and the most successful people. I don't know that that's true. They always use a few examples, but I know in my world and the world that I function in that it varies. You know, there are those people who get up every day at 4 a.m. and they go work out for an hour and they answer emails for an hour and they come up with a big brand new creative ideas for their company and they write the first chapter of the great American novel all before 9 o'clock in the morning. Great. If that's you, then you tackle that ugly frog at the crack of dawn or before dawn. But if that's not you, there's nothing wrong with that. If you are a later in the day, night owl kind of person and you find your brain percolating then, tackle that big ugly frog then. If you are constrained to a work day, now a lot of us are working from home now, so the boundaries are a little freer. But schedule your stuff if you're not necessarily that morning person, at least for after lunch or later in the afternoon for those big, tough projects. Block out that time. Also, when you're tackling that big, difficult task, gather everything you need before you sit down to do it. Whether it's a work project and you need to gather research, you need to get on the internet and pull some information, you need to pull some information out of your files, or whether it's a home project and you are tackling a repair or something, gather all of the tools that you need before you begin. Because once you start getting up to look for stuff, or you start getting off that page on your laptop and going to search something in the internet, guess what happens? It's like Alice down the rabbit hole. You get distracted, you waste time, and your brain loses that focus. Now, sometimes it can't be helped, but sometimes you got to run to the hardware store in the middle of a project. But for the most part, if you can gather everything you need and have it ready, you're going to get things done a lot more efficiently and a lot faster. And along with that goes turning off all the bells and whistles that might distract you. Turn off those email notifications that slide across your screen. Turn off the ding that happens every time somebody texts you. Turn the ringer off on the phone. Turn the TV off, okay? Now, if you're working at home and you have kids running around, that's probably going to be a challenge. But for the most part, we can at least deal with the digital distractions that interfere, because every time you're distracted by something, even if you don't deal with it in the moment, your attention is drawn just for a second. Even if you hear that ding and you look and you think, oh, I got a text. Should I look at it? Could it be important? No, it's probably not important. Well, guess what? Even without answering or even looking at that text, you have distracted yourself. And it's going to take another however many seconds, minutes for your brain to come back and focus again. There was a study done that said we could lose as much as 40% of our productive time dealing with these distractions and interruptions. So shut it down, close it off, and allow yourself that time to eat that big slimy frog. Next tip is what I call divide and conquer. And this is what happens when you have something really big and really difficult to do, and you just don't know where to start. I don't know where to start. I hear this a lot with work projects, with home organization. It's such a mess. I don't even know where to start. My project is so big. I'm leaving. I'm avoiding it. I'm procrastinating about it because I don't even know where to how to grab hold of it. And what I'm going to suggest that you do is that you chunk it down, because if there's anything that requires you to do more than one single task, it's not a task, it's a project. A task is something you could do in one step. A project, it's a task is something like send a quick email, pay the national grid bill, go out and get a carton of milk. Simple, easy, quick, single step things. A project is a multi-task event. It's going to require more than just one step. And usually those big projects that are intimidating and we're having a difficult time figuring out where to start are not tasks, they're projects. So I'm going to suggest that you chunk it down into single step tasks. And whether you do that, on a one task per sticky note or one task per index card, or just a long list on a page or on your laptop, break it down into small steps. All right. And then you're going to need to estimate about how long each step takes. Then you'll have a good view of what you have to do and the time it's going to take to do it. David Allen, in his book, Getting Things Done, which I think is like 20 years old now, hard to believe, still a great book about productivity and time management, calls it doing a brain dump. Now, brain dump has become a very popular expression, and a lot of people have kind of usurped it. But to my knowledge, it was about 20 years ago that David Allen coined that phrase. And a brain dump is something you do to get everything out of your head and down into some concrete format, whether it's with paper and pen or whether it's typed into your computer. He suggests taking however much time it takes to sit there and get everything out of your head, everything. Not only does it help clarify what you need to do and helps that attitude of I have so much to think about, I don't know where to start, it also helps relieve that psychic burden that we all have when we know there are things kind of wandering around in the back of our head or even in the front of our head or on the sticky notes all over our screens or in our calendars or in our phones that we're afraid that we've probably forgotten about. We know there's stuff in there that, oh, I know I forgot about this. Where is it? I have to do it. Or if you've completely forgotten about it and then it pops up later, oh, what an unpleasant surprise. I forgot I had to do this. So get it all out of your head. I suggest doing it in writing. Physically, the act of writing has been shown to improve memory. It helps make those connections across your brain between the mental and the physical. Anytime you pair a mental activity with a physical activity, like doing a brain dump and writing it down physically, your brain retains it better, absorbs it better, and remembers it better. So I suggest using paper and pen, but whatever works for you. If you don't want to do that and you feel that you can type it all out faster, do it. I'm going to ask you right now, right this minute, to do a mini brain dump. Now, some people, when they do their brain dumps, it can take 45 minutes, an hour and a half, and they have lists of like 500 or 600 things. I don't want you to do that right now. I want you to do that later. Right now, I want you to take maybe the next 45 seconds and do a 5-item brain dump. 5 things that are in your brain right now that you know you have to do, maybe today, maybe this week, maybe in the future. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Write them down. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to do that right now. You can put some in the comments if you like. You could type some of this in the comments. Laurie can let us know. Or you can just do it between you and yourself and your paper. Okay, so that wasn't so hard, right? Just 5 things. I don't know whether anybody's put anything in the comments. Laurie, if you see them, you could probably shout them out. So now, this is just a mini exercise, folks. So now that you've got your mini brain dump, 5 things out of your head, I want you to take another 10 seconds or so and put a time estimate next to each one as to how long you think each one of those tasks is going to take. And don't overthink this, folks. This is not being carved in stone, okay? This is something that you're just using as a guide to figure out how long it will take. Each thing, this will take me 5 minutes, this will take me 20 minutes, this will take me an hour, real quick. Okay, I hope you're done. I feel like the teacher saying, everybody pencils down. So now, even with just a quick 5-item brain dump, you have at least a little bit of structure around the things, a few of the things that you have to do. And now you know how long it's going to take and where on your calendar you can schedule it. Because when you're looking at a big amorphous project and you're not really sure where to start or how long it's going to take, you got to chunk it down. Once you chunk it down and put some time estimates next to each piece of it, then you can look at your calendar and say, all right, well, on Tuesday, I'm booked all day with meetings and other things. I don't have time to put anything in. But on Wednesday, from 10 to 12 in the morning, I have 2 hours and I could pull this task and this task and this task. So it puts a little bit of structure around something that might not have any boundaries around it. If you're looking for a great tool to do that brain dump, particularly if it's a project that you're trying to break down into pieces and you're kind of a visual person, I'm going to suggest trying a mind map. Now, on the next screen is this very cool mind map that I found online. It was digitally made, as you can see, because it's too perfect. A mind map is a project sorting, chunking down tool. I use mind maps all the time, particularly when I have a presentation that I need to do, and there's a topic in my head, and there are a billion aspects of that topic that I want to talk about, but I got to get out of my head and down into something concrete. So what you do is you put the main theme in the middle, and each major branch off of it are the major topics related to that theme. And then there are little sub branches off of each of the main branches for the minor topics that will come. It is a wonderful way, if you're a visual person, to see what you have to do without necessarily having to put it in a structured, linear kind of outline kind of form. That might come later. This is software. There's a million mind mapping softwares out there. If you just Google mind map, you'll come up with it. One of the nice ones is mindmeister.com, mind, MEISTER.com. And they will give you a couple of free ones, and then you have to pay. They're not terribly expensive. If you prefer to do things digitally like this, I don't use mind mapping software because I can be a bit of a perfectionist, and I get sucked into things like making the colors right, finding just the right font, rearranging the space around it. And then I've wasted time on things that are not important, and they have nothing to do, unless you're going to take this mind map and present it to somebody else. They have nothing to do with me getting what I have to get done. So I just use a piece of paper and a pen. And on the next slide is a mind map that I did for a presentation. I think it was early last spring. This was the working topic, organize your office and your brain. I think we called it Control What You Can Control. And it was about organizing your physical stuff and your mental stuff and clearing the clutter away so that you can accomplish what you need to accomplish. But this is an example. This is what the inside of my brain looks like, folks. It's a little scary, a little messy. But what happens is if I can get this all out, then it's not so scary and it's not so messy. And this took me maybe 10 minutes. And it was a brain dump about this particular topic in the middle. Main branches are the main topics, and then subtopics off of each branch. And then there's arrows and crossouts and all kinds of crazy stuff as I move along. But then this is out of my head, and it forms the basis of what I have to do when I next have to put some notes together, or make a slide deck for it, or even make a handout for it. This is the first step. So just a tool to throw out for you, a mind map. If you're going to get sucked into the perfectionistic stuff of the digital world, just do it on a piece of paper and a pen. And I can see some of these comments coming up. That's great. That's great. Thank you for commenting. Okay, so ready? Next tip. Time your approach. Again, this is the kind of thing that helps combat procrastination. I don't know about you, but even as a time management productivity expert, I still struggle with procrastination sometimes. I guarantee you, if someone says they have never, ever struggled with procrastination, I think they're either lying or they're in denial, because I think all of us at one time or another have struggled with getting started on something that we know we have to do, that we know we should do, but there's something getting in our way. And one of the ways to combat that is to use a timer. And this is based on something called the Pomodoro technique. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this. My version of it is kind of an alteration of that. Francesco Cirillo was a graduate student back in the 80s, and he realized that if he set a timer for 25 minutes and did concentrated work for 25 minutes and then took a 5-minute break, he was much more effective and he got a lot more done. He called it the Pomodoro approach because the timer he used was shaped like a tomato. And Pomodoro is the Italian word for tomato. So a lot of people think the Pomodoro approach was invented by someone whose name is Pomodoro. It's not. It's about the timer. I used an apple because I like green better. But the 25 plus 5-minute approach, he called that a Pomodoro, 25 plus 5, has been shown because neuroscientists have shown that your brain works far better in short, concentrated spurts with a short break in between than it does trying to sit and concentrate solely on something for a couple of hours. I don't know about you, but I always remember when I had to attend a lecture, the best lectures were one that were done in short spurts. And then the professor would not necessarily give us a break, but switch to something for a few minutes and then go back. Because having to focus and concentrate on something for more than about 25, 30 minutes at a time is very difficult for our brains, particularly when we are trying to produce something. So I'm going to suggest that you get a timer. It doesn't have to be a physical timer. It could be a digital timer on your laptop or on your phone. I like a physical timer because I like to actually have something separate that I can see and that has a pretty loud signal when my 25 minutes is up. For some of my clients, 25 minutes might be a little long for them. If they're struggling with ADHD or something like that, sometimes I will alter this and say, well, just do 15 minutes. Anybody can focus on something for 15 minutes, right? So just shorten it. Just do 15 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. Now, the break is really important in that you have to set the timer for the break too. Because if you just set the timer for the work time and then say, oh, okay, now I'm going to go off and do something else for 5 minutes. And I suggest getting away from the screen, by the way. Get away from the screen for 5 minutes. Step outside. Go do something else if you're working from home. If you have to go throw a load of laundry in, just do something else to let your brain relax for a minute. But you got to set the timer for the 5 minutes. Because if you don't set the timer for 5 minutes, you're going to get distracted and you're going to get involved with something. And before you know it, 45 minutes has gone by and you have lost your momentum. So you have to set the timer so that it goes off after 5 minutes to click your brain back into, okay, it's time to get back to work now. Now, for some of my clients, they have said to me, I did that trick with the timer and I set it for 15 minutes. But at 15 minutes when it went off, I was really on a roll. So I wanted to keep going. Do I have to stop? No, you don't have to stop. If you're on a roll and you're still producing and your brain is really on high gear, keep going until you get to that point where your brain says, all right, I need a break. Then set the timer for 5 minutes. Doesn't have to be hard and fast rules. Tip number 4, I call one life, one calendar. And this came about because of so many clients that I work with who really were having things fall through the cracks. They were double booking themselves. They were underestimating how much they had to do, or they were overestimating how much time they actually had to get something done. And what was happening with a lot of them is they had multiple calendars. All right. They had, say, an Outlook calendar that they were using at work, and then they had a paper calendar that they were using for all their personal stuff and their family stuff and their home stuff. And what's happening is there was no syncing between the two. Sometimes it was Outlook and Outlook, and sometimes it was paper and paper. I had one client who had, she used Outlook for work. She had a paper planner that she used at home. She had a little calendar that she walked around with in her purse just in case something happened while she was out and she wanted to write it down. And what was happening was, she would try to remember if one got written into one calendar, but it didn't get into the other calendar to transfer it over. When you're busy and you've got a lot going on, that's not going to happen. Let's be real. There's only so much our brains can hold. Particularly here in the frontal lobe part, you can only hold 1 or 2 things at a time. You really can't hold a lot of things to remember. What's going to happen is some of that stuff is going to get pushed out by some of the newer stuff that's coming in. And it's not until later when you realize you've booked a client at 3:00 and you have to be at your son's soccer game at 3:00, or maybe someday you'll get to go to your son's soccer game again. And you scheduled yourself to be in 2 places at the same time. This is happening a lot to my clients who tried to have more than one calendar. Now, there is always an exception. If you walk into the office at 9 and you leave the office at 5 or some delineated time, and the stuff on your work calendar only is work stuff. You never have any personal stuff. You never have anything else that has to happen during that day. Then I suppose it's okay just to keep a calendar just for work. But for most of us, that's not realistic, particularly now. Our personal lives are bleeding into our professional lives and our family lives, and all that stuff is kind of getting mushed together. It's so much better to keep it all in one calendar. One life, one calendar. Color coding is a great way to keep those things separate if you need to on the same calendar. I use Google Calendar. I can color code things for work, things for networking, things for family time or personal time, things for speaking have different colors. So at a glance, I may not know exactly what it is, but I know the category it relates to. If you have to keep a bunch of family members' calendars together, you can sync them all, but you're only still using one calendar. That's going to help keep that stress of, am I forgetting something? Do I have, what do I have to do? Where do I have to be? Where do I have to go? Oh my gosh, I have 5 things booked at the same time because I had it on 3 different calendars. It does help you get a better handle on what the shape of your day is and how much you have to tackle in that day if it's all in one place. Now, I know the next question is going to be, oh, what kind of calendar should I use? I get that question all the time. What is your best recommendation for a calendar or a task management tool? And my answer is always, it depends. I can't tell you because unless I know you very well or I've worked with you or we talk for a while, I don't know whether a paper calendar is going to be better for you than a digital calendar. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that when you use it religiously. You make a habit out of it and you stop bouncing from tool to tool to tool to tool. I love to tell this story. I had this wonderful client. She was a physician, very busy physician. She also had a very busy family life. We worked on physically organizing her practice office, and then we physically organized her home office. But as we were getting down towards the end of our time, I said to her, unless we have a handle on your calendar and your time management, this stuff is not going to stay beautifully organized like this, because we're going to have to figure out how you can organize your time so that everything around it stays organized. And she said to me, oh, I knew this was coming. I need to show you my drawer of shame. And I thought, okay. I put what I call my organizer face on. No judgment. So we were in her home office at the time. She said, come with me. So we go upstairs to the master bedroom and we walk over to this big, giant tall dresser. And she pulls open one big, deep drawer and she says to me, this is my drawer of shame. So I'm thinking, okay. And I go over and I look, and that drawer is filled to the brim, big drawer, with paper calendars and paper planners. There were big fancy, like Franklin Covey types. There were the little kind that you used to get free at the Hallmark store. There were little Lily Pulitzer ones, really cute ones. There were some real serious, daytimer kind of ones. And there must have been 60 or 70 of them in there. And I started to pull them out. We started to look at them. And even though they were all different, they all had one thing in common. They were all only partially filled. Couple of months at the most, she had written things in them, and then the rest of them were blank. And she said to me, I'm always searching for the best calendar to use. And every time I see one, I buy it because I think, ooh, this is it. This is the tool that's going to get me organized. And what she didn't realize was it's not about the tool. It's about the process. So I'm going to tell you, pick your calendar. One, paper, digital, doesn't matter. But then commit to stick to using it religiously every day for the next 3 months at a minimum. By the end of 3 months, you will have created a really reliable habit. And you'll also know, is this the right tool for me? You'll be able to tell, but only if you have gotten comfortable with it and are using it regularly, every day, sitting down every night to plan out the next day, or maybe if you're one of those crack of dawn people, opening it every morning to look at what your day looks like, to plan the next day, long range planning for the week, the month, but using it religiously, creating that habit so that you don't let things fall through the cracks and that you don't end up with a drawer of shame. So hopefully these 4 tips have helped you a little bit. Hopefully you're walking away with something. There's one more tip. To me, this is more of a big global kind of concept tip. Is this you in times of stress? Coffee and wine, sweetheart. Yeah, it's been me sometimes. I will confess. If this is you and you're really struggling and you're saying to me, well, Lisa, this is great. These are all really helpful tips, but I have so much to do. I just can't fit it all into the time that I have to do it. And when people ask me, give me just one good time management tip, what's the best time management tip that you have? My response is always, make a commitment. Make a commitment. And on the next slide, I'm going to clarify what I mean. Make a commitment to what's important. Figure out what your priorities are. You know, Stephen Covey tells a story, I'm not going to take time to tell it here, about filling a big glass jar with rocks and pebbles and water. And the ultimate moral of the story is the big rocks have to go in first. Because if you don't put the big rocks in first, all of the space is filled up with pebbles and water and sand. And if that's happening to your schedule, if that's happening to your time, if you're not really sure what your priorities are, your schedule might be filled with stuff that don't align with those priorities. So what I'd like you to do, and maybe you can do it right now, is to sit down and jot down, what are your big rocks? What are your priorities in life? And a lot of people will say things like, well, my priorities are my family, my physical health, working out, eating right, and making more money at work, or something like that. And then you take a good hard look at their calendar, and their calendar does not reflect those priorities. Or you take a good hard look at your credit card statement or your checkbook. Is it clear what your priorities are when you look in your calendar, in your credit card statement, in your checkbook? Is it clear? I should be able to look at that and say, I know what this person's priorities are. It's this, 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 and this. But a lot of times people say their priorities, but it's not evidenced by what they're really living. And I don't think that's because they're lying or they're deluded. I think that we just get caught up in day-to-day stuff and we take things on that may not align with our priorities. Sometimes we don't have a choice about that, and I acknowledge that. But a lot of times we do. And the second thing, when I say make a commitment, is to make a commitment to change. Now, here we are, the whole New Year's resolution things, and we're all coming back to the beginning. We make New Year's resolutions, and a lot of times we're not really ready for change. Sometimes I have had some clients or two over the years who called me in and we worked, but nothing really got better. And there was some dissatisfaction. And we had to have, I call it the come to Jesus talk about, are you really ready to change how you're doing this? You know the expression, if you want what you've always had, you do what you've always done. If you want something different, You need to do something different. And I think we need to acknowledge that in order for things to change, we have to make a commitment to that change. If you want to get more fit, if you want to get in better shape, you have to put, those SMART goals, right? It's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound, I think, are the 5 things. So instead of just saying, I want to be in better shape, you have to say, all right, I am going to walk for 20 minutes, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 6:30 to 7 a.m. That is a SMART goal. It's specific. And I know you've heard this a million times because this is what everybody talks about when it comes time to New Year's resolutions or making some kind of change. But it's true. You have to want to do something differently if you want to have something different in your life. And the last part of this make a commitment is to get comfortable with the word no. Some of us really struggle with this. I am a former people pleaser, and I still have to think hard sometimes when my first instinct is to say yes to something that I know I really don't want to do, or I know I don't have time to do it, or it doesn't align with the priorities I've established in my life. So maybe you can type into the chat what 1 or 2 of your priorities are, or just keep it inside you. That's okay. But you have to clarify that. And then maybe you can decide, what is it that I have to say no to? Or what is it that I have a hard time saying no to, that I need to say no to so that I can align my life with those priorities? If you'd like to share, great. You don't have to share. Some of this is very, very intensely personal. But put it down, get it out of your head, get it down in some concrete fashion, because that will be the first step to making sure things change. Now, I'm going to take some time for some questions, but I want to leave you a little something. This was a blog that I found by a guy named Tim Deng. He wrote, the most powerful word in business is no. But I think this applies to personal as well as business. He said, if there were a barometer that told you when to say yes, how would it work? It would go like this. If an opportunity comes your way and you don't instantly think, hell yes, then say no. Because this removes the emotion and the thinking required to make a decision. So once you've figured out what's important, you're going to open up space in your life and in your time so that you can say no to the stuff that isn't important, and you have space to say yes to the stuff that is important. And thank you. I'm going to take some questions now. Before we do that, I would like to tell you that, the topic of organization and productivity and time management is huge. I could talk about it all day. You would either be falling asleep at your computers or you'd be walking away saying, oh my goodness, I'm done. So what I do is I write a newsletter every month, an e-newsletter once a month about some topic related to those fields. I also try to put in some interesting things about events, workshops, some things that I do, some things that other people are offering, events that I think might be helpful to the local folks, like shredding events and that kind of stuff, or e-waste collection. I send it out once a month. If you would like to get that newsletter once a month, you can either go to my website, Griffith PS, or Griffith Productivity Solutions, either one will get you there, .com. Or I have written a planner, a 90-day planner, and there are tips and things like that, some of which I talked about today, but a lot more, and space to plan the next 90 days, monthly goals, weekly goals, and daily goals. Because 90 days seems to be, if you do something consistently for 90 days, it establishes a habit. So I've got a bunch of these. I'm going to raffle 3 of them off. If you would like to, I'd be happy to mail it to you. If you'd like to be in the raffle for a free planner, I would like you to email me at lisa@griffithps.com with the subject line, sign me up. And I will sign you up for the newsletter because you've given me permission. And I will enter your name into a raffle. I'm going to go 3, and I will mail 3 lucky people a planner. You can keep it, give it to somebody else if you think somebody else in your life could use it. But just feel free to email me. Sign me. Okay, Laurie, are we ready?
We are ready. Thank you.
Question time.
That was great. Very energizing. I know we all feel very energized. So let me just take a minute and go through some of the comments here. And this has been an amazing set of comments. And just to reinforce, we are live on Twitter. We are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube, and receive lots of interesting points of pride here. So Kathy says, what surprised me that something I was putting off will only take 25 minutes. It seems easier now. So you were talking about, doing the brain dump, just prioritizing, and then sort of, when you're eating the frog, say, how long, is it really going to take? Is it really that bad?
Yeah. And I think sometimes when we break it down and put an estimate on it, you think, just like Kathleen said, oh, okay, well, at least I know where to start, and maybe this won't be so bad.
Yeah. We sometimes in our brain, we don't even want to go there. Sometimes I make a list of things that I'm avoiding. So it's like,
that's a good one. That's a good one.
I have it like, okay, what am I avoiding? What don't I want to tackle for whatever psychic reason? There's a lot packed in there. I don't want to deal with it. So if you make a list,
it does. I love that. A list of things that you're avoiding. And sometimes it's good to ask yourself, why am I avoiding this? Let's get down. Let's dig underneath and get to the roots of it. Well, am I afraid of something? Is it going to put me in an uncomfortable position? Have I tried this before and failed? Am I afraid to fail? So sometimes you have to really ask yourself some hard questions about why you're avoiding something.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. I say, why don't I want to do this? It's inevitably things that must be done, right?
Yes.
It's not like even something that's optional. Yes. Okay, so Rachel says, I can relate to that. And that came up when you were talking about being a perfectionist on the digital mind map, like playing with the fonts and the colors and the spacing.
Oh, yeah.
That is definitely something that I would do.
Yeah. Hi, Rachel. Good point.
Sometimes people just, it's another form of avoidance, right? If I keep playing with the fonts and lining everything up and making everything look perfect, it's just another form of, just putting off what you should be doing.
Point.
So that's
excellent point. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent point. Yeah.
All right. So our good friend, Audra, hi, Audra, how you doing? Nice to see you again. She says, I love this. And what she's talking about here is the Pomodoro method and the timer, the 25-5. And she says, the reason I love this is I think it'll help my daughter not bother me until the timer goes off too. So it's, an auditory, sort of signal to other people around you to, leave me alone until the timer goes off.
That's a really good point, particularly when we're all at home together. Excellent point. I'd like to remind people it doesn't necessarily have to be 25-5. It could be 15-5 or even 15-10 if you're really struggling. And a product I forgot to recommend for a beautiful visual timer is a timer called, it's from timetimer.com. And they make timers that show red for the time that you have remaining. And as the red disappears, your time disappears. It's an analog timer. So for kids in particular, if you set that timer, they don't even necessarily have to see how much time. They can just look at how much red is left. It's a great visual tool.
Mm-hmm. Well, my problem with that, Lisa, is that if it's a digital timer, then, and I've done this, I'm like, okay, well, how many more minutes do I have left? And then I'm looking at my phone, and all of a sudden I become sort of, enmeshed in a text or an email or something. So I think that's why you're talking about a physical something physical and
Exactly.
don't do it on your phone, because that puts you down the rabbit hole.
Exactly.
That's how I would see it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So Audra, thank you for that comment. Lucy says, I have to be able to watch this again. Lisa and Laurie, I was interrupted, distracted 3 times already since it started. Want you to know, not a problem. All of our Chamber TV episodes are uploaded on our Chamber website, profchamber.com. Once again, this is episode 101, and you will be able to look at it as many times as you want, and take as many notes as you want, even if you get distracted. So the magic of video. Deb, our great friend Deb, says she wants to lose 20 pounds in 2021. So this is in response to your question of, what are your priorities, and are you making it a priority? And I know Deb, and I will tell you that she will make this a priority, and she will make this happen, because she's incredibly organized with her time.
I agree. I know Deb too. And I know that Deb will accomplish anything she sets her mind to. So
yeah. And one day I asked her, I said, how is it that you are able to accomplish all these things that you put your mind to? So she gave me a great answer. But yeah, it's the power of determination, and it's the power of, getting over the inertia of it, and just pushing through and being, persevering and persisting, and all those words that begin with a P that I think are just, so incredibly real and important.
Yeah.
So,
an important P word for yourself that I'm always telling my clients is patience. You got to be patient with yourself. I have a lot of clients who are beating themselves up, because I'm so disorganized. I'm such a loser. I've tried this a million times and I've always failed. And my advice is to be patient with yourself and be kind to yourself, and talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend, because we're so hard on ourselves, but we would never say the things to a good friend that we say to ourselves. So try to treat yourself like you would treat somebody you love.
Exactly. Okay. So Lynette, she said, me time, meditation, and yoga. Those are the things that she wants to prioritize in 2021. So those are really good thoughts. Lynette, she says, learning time, studying for my certifications. So those are very, the things that she has put here: meditation, yoga, and studying for certifications. That's a lot of brain power. So what would you suggest to Lynette?
I'm going to suggest that she put some boundaries around that stuff. Make them smart. In other words, put some specific time. I'm going to meditate on these days, or maybe meditation is probably kind of an everyday thing. From this time to this time, I'm going to wear these clothes. I'm going to sit in this spot. I'm going to maybe have to set a timer so that I can really relax and let go of what, the amount of time that's passing. The same thing for learning time and studying time. If you say, well, I'm going to study on Wednesday, that's a very amorphous goal, and Wednesday is going to slip away and be gone before you realize it. So decide what you have to study and break it down. What do I have to study? Chunk it down into small parts and give it a time, assign it a time in your day. 9 to 10 a.m. I'm going to study this particular thing.
Yep. Good way to approach that. Rachel says, thank you so much, Lisa. She's commenting that there's so much to take in. It's such useful information. And what you do, Lisa, is you go beyond the obvious, and, you really get underneath it and sort of, unearth all the psychological aspects of it too. And you deliver the content really well. And that's
thank you.
You are a former teacher, right?
I am. And I'm still teaching to a certain extent every day. But yeah, I was a teacher for 20 years. Yep. And it still informs the work that I do on a daily basis. I love to convey stuff to people, and I love the feedback. The feedback's the best part, for people to ask questions and to challenge. That's the fun part for me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get to more feedback. Sue says, it's hard for me to say no to work because there's so much to do, and I often work very long hours.
Mhm.
Oh, that's a shame, huh?
Mhm.
What do you say to Sue?
Hi, Sue. I understand this because you are not alone. This is a situation for a lot of us, especially right now. I'm going to say to sit down and really, the prioritizing thing is a big deal. It may not necessarily be all work prioritizing, but if it's work that's kind of taking over your day, you may need to sit down and just be realistic about, you know what, this is what my time really is. This is the time I really have, instead of thinking, oh, I can do all of these things in this amount of time. It's, what is it, the 5-pound bag of flour and a 3-pound sack kind of thing, for an old fashioned reference. But to really sit down and analyze and say, all right, this is a priority and this is a priority and this is a priority, but I might be able to let this go at least for a while. Julie Morgenstern wrote a great book called Time Management from the Inside Out. And she talks about when it comes time to looking at your calendar and your schedule and you're overwhelmed, she talks about making 4 decisions, and I'm going to add a 5th. She talks about delegating, if you can, to somebody else. Diminish, which means, does the task have to be done in this big perfectionistic maybe way, or can we pare it down, diminish it, just get it done maybe in a smaller way? Number 3 is delay. Put it off. If it's something that doesn't have to be done right now, right here, if you can delay it, send it down the road for a while. And the 4th one is to delete, because delete means it doesn't fit your priorities. And it might be something that's been lingering for a long time. It's that thing on your to-do list that keeps moving from list to list to list, or it's a sticky note. I have a board up here right behind my laptop that has a sticky notes. It's kind of a Trello kind of thing in real time. And if a sticky note has been up there too long, if I go to pull it off and half the sticky note still stays on the board because it's been on there so long, then it might be time for me to think, maybe I need to delete this. And for me, the 5th one, of course, is do it, but that's obvious. So I hope that's helpful.
Yep. Okay. So Julie Morgenstern, professional organizer. Believe it or not, when we used to run business expos, Lisa, back in the late 80s, early 90s, Julie Morgenstern was a speaker that we brought in to give a keynote address. So that's just
she was a hot topic. It's been about 20 years now. You're right. And she was the one who really, I think, brought the organizing world into the forefront. And she's still very, very active. She's writing books on organized parenting these days.
Okay. So I just thought I'd share that as a piece of chamber trivia for you. Okay, so Lucy says, just like from Oklahoma, I'm just the girl who can't say no.
Yeah.
Saying no and going, absolutely not. It's not, it's not that I don't love you. It's not that I don't respect this task. It's just that it's not good for me at the moment, right?
And it's hard. It's hard for me. I get it. Oh boy, do I understand. I'm going to give you a little resource. I'm hoping it's still out there online. There is an article written by Christine Carter, who wrote a great book called The Sweet Spot. But the article that she wrote was called 21 Ways to Give Good No. And she gives you 21 short, sweet ways to say no in a way that might be easier or more comfortable. And it's a good way to kind of have them in your back pocket. I think it's still out there. I haven't looked for it in a little while. If you can't find it, let me know. Email me and I will find the link for you and send it to you. 21 ways to give good no. Might be helpful.
Yeah, perfect. That's important. Just to, also to practice them, right? So people say, okay, if you need a go-to expression, just go in front of the mirror and just, practice, just throw that line out and watch yourself do it and, make it so that it rolls off the tip of your tongue very easily and, really own it and feel good about it. So that might
Yeah, and a good thing to do is a delaying tactic. If someone asks you on the spot, say to them, well, can you give me some time to think about that? And then you can go home and you can practice saying no before you have to get back to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I notice I have a good friend who he does do that. You ask him a question and he'll say, I don't know, let me think about that. And it always strikes me as so like such a wise thing, because then you feel as though he actually is going to go home and think about it and come back with a really great answer. But it is a great delaying tactic.
Yeah, and it's a very mindful way to approach what you take on and what you decide not to take on. You know, mindfulness is the big buzzword now, but it's true.
Yeah. You know, Sue also says, you know, why won't I say no? So that probably unpacks a whole bunch of other things in terms of, you know, being a people pleaser or, you know, afraid of rejection. There's probably a lot of other things packed into that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to the whole thing when we were talking about avoiding certain tasks or procrastinating. Get to the root of, why are you uncomfortable saying no to this? If you really don't want to do it, or you know you really shouldn't do it, or you can't do it, why do you feel compelled to say yes? Getting into the root of it, you know, that says deep psychological things. Thank heavens I'm not a mental health professional, but it is true that you really kind of have to examine what's underneath all that.
Yeah. And I would encourage people to really take that seriously, because all of this is sort of window dressing if you really haven't come to grips with, you know, what is the real motivation, and you know, do you really know yourself, right? You have to really know yourself and what makes you tick and what makes you not tick in order to really be able to tackle this in a way that creates lasting change.
It's true. It's Laurie, that is so true. It is, again, about really acknowledging, what are my priorities? Where are my big rocks? What is really where I want to spend my time and how I want to be living my life? You know, because there's a great quote by Peter Walsh, who was the professional organizer, used to be on Oprah's show all the time. I think he's on Rachel Ray now occasionally, Australian guy. And one of the things he says is, clutter is not just the stuff in your space. It's anything that's getting in the way of how you want to live your life. I love that, because it's true.
Yeah. It's not just physical stuff. It's not just stuff that you have strewn all over the table. It's the stuff that you are, you know, you're trying to keep track of in your own mind, and then you want to avoid it. This reminds me, you know, the question about how to say no. One of our other episodes, our earlier episodes, one we did with Katie McDonald back in the spring when we were doing them on Wednesday, Katie and I actually did a mock discussion where she and I, you know, sort of rehearsed how to say no. So I was asking Katie to serve on a big committee, and she was intent on saying no. So she illustrated in this little mock discussion how saying no might sound in real life. So
that's great.
Yeah, if you're really interested in that, go look at you know, it's probably episode, you know, somewhere between, you know, 30 and 40 of Chamber TV, somewhere back there. So Katie McDonald from Be Nourished, she and I did that exact exercise. So Paula says, thank you, Lisa. Love all this. Harley says, thank you. I have OCD and tend to overwhelm myself. So you mentioned OCD and setting the timer for, you know, a scale back period if 25 minutes seems like too much.
Yeah, it was more of an ADHD thing. I try not to use the expression OCD too much, because I do have friends and clients who have OCD, and sometimes I think they feel that people use that expression just to explain someone who's somewhat perfectionistic, and it's a pretty tough illness. But if you really do have OCD, it's understandable that you struggle with getting overwhelmed. And the ADHD component of it is, maybe 25 minutes is too long. Maybe 15 minutes is more suitable to how your brain works, as long as you set that timer and make yourself come back.
Yep. Okay. So I hope that was helpful. Harley, let's see what else we have here. We have so many comments, and you know, feel free, folks, to keep to keep submitting them. We are live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And obviously this topic has struck a nerve. So Lisa, if you're okay with keeping going on this.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. We don't want to exhaust people because we know that we have definitely gone beyond time where people can focus. So we want to, we do want to acknowledge that. So but we're going to keep going because replay it. Okay. So Lucy's back and she says, it sounds like recognizing projects and breaking projects down to tasks makes them easier to manage, less overwhelming, less intimidating. So you talked about a task being a one sequence thing, where a project is an aggregation of tasks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just breaking them down, but it's also estimating how much time, because a lot of times we look at these things, whoever it was who said earlier, I'm avoiding something that I realized is only going to take me 25 minutes. I think it was Kathleen. That's so true, because once you break it down and you say, well, this is going to take me probably about 10 minutes. This is going to take me about a half an hour. And you look at something that you thought was going to take you days and days and days. And reality is, well, this is going to take me maybe about 3 hours total. And I can do a chunk of it here on this day, and a chunk of it here on this day, and a chunk of it here on this day. And all of a sudden, something that was a giant elephant, that expression, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It's down to bite-sized pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, sometimes if we see something that's really big and complicated, like finish your year-end review or something like that. I mean, who wants to do that, right? So, if it will take a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of focus, a lot of hours, again, back to your point of, just, really doing it in little teeny pieces and being able to feel the satisfaction of checking off the box. Like, okay, I gathered all my materials as an example.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So Kate says, this has been really helpful, Lisa, very easy to follow. So thank you, Kate. Kathleen is back. And yes, Kathleen was the one that mentioned that, hey, it might only take 25 minutes. She says, as always, this has been very helpful. Thank you so much, Lisa and Laurie. Lynette says, thank you, Lisa. I think that is one thing I've been missing, being smart with goals and being specific. So she's mentioning strategic, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time sensitive, the SMART acronym.
Exactly. The SMART acronym has slightly different variations depending on who's presenting it, but it's the idea. It's the idea of being specific and putting time boundaries around it, and rather than some big amorphous thing. That's what the SMART thing is supposed to do.
Right. Just, kind of make it more visual in your mind. Like, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Kate wants to know, what subject did you teach, Lisa?
All right. Are you ready for this? It was music.
Music.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I have several degrees and I spent 20 years in teaching, another 10 years as an administrative church music kind of person. And I was always the administrative person that did all the organizational stuff. And that's how this kind of came about. I always had colleagues coming to me and saying, your classroom is so organized. How do you do this? That kind of stuff. So yeah, I was a music teacher for 20 years.
Wow. So what grade level?
Mostly middle school. I taught K through 12 across the spectrum at some time or another, but the bulk of my career was spent teaching 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Wow. And when I first went out into the field, the last thing I thought I would ever do is want to teach middle school kids, but that was the opportunity, especially the last place I was, which was at the Gordon School, fabulous place in East Providence. And it was what was available. And I took the job, and I just grew to just love that age group. My husband thinks it's because it was a meeting of the minds, the same level of immaturity, but I just love middle school kids. They're still kind of childish, and they're busting into that pre-adolescent age, and they don't censor themselves very much. But when you grab their attention and you can get them enthusiastic about something, it is just the most rewarding thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How many musical instruments do you play?
Well, I was a voice major and piano minor. I can play a lot of things half-assed, like elementary stuff like the recorder, and guitar. But I would say mainly voice and piano.
Okay, interesting. That's amazing. Okay, so let's go back to Lottie's. Says, thanks, Lisa. It's frustrating that we know most of this stuff and still don't do it and then feel bad. Thanks again for making it workable and reminding us that we are not alone in our stupid behavior. So I think what we need to say to this one is you got to be compassionate with yourself, right? Yeah. It's not stupid behavior. It's human nature, right?
Exactly. It's what you were saying before about the P's, right? Lottie, I met Lottie yesterday in the chamber networking thing. It's nice that you came. Don't be so hard on yourself. Annie Rohrbach, who's an author, had the best expression I've ever heard when I heard her speak one day. She said, you need to stop shoulding all over yourself. I should do this and I should do this. And all you do is make yourself feel badly. So have some more compassion for yourself. Like Laurie said, speak to yourself like you would speak to someone you love.
Absolutely. All right, Sue, she's put forth a lot of comments in the window, and we thank you so much, Sue, for engaging with us. She says, thank you, such good advice. Love that.
Hi, Sue.
Says, Time Timer has an app for iPhone and Android, so thank you for the suggestion.
It does. It does. It's great. I forgot to mention that. Here it is. Let me see. That's it on my phone.
Wow. Okay.
There you go. You can set the timer, and as the red disappears, your time disappears. So I will say this. It doesn't have a very loud signal that the time is up. It's easy to miss. So I like the physical one better, but it is a great app.
It's like the timer on the microwave oven if you're not really right there.
Absolutely.
You can miss the fact that went off. Like if you're
exactly. Yeah. Oh, and don't forget, folks, I'm going to give 3 of these away. So if you email me, sign me up.
Right.
You could win one.
Okay. Another great friend of ours, Katie Makeley, former first lady of Bryant University. Katie, I trust you and Ron are doing well in your well-deserved retirement, and you were a leader in Women's Summit and bringing women together and crystallizing great ideas. So it's so great to see you weighing in here. She said, your 90-day planner is a great way to start the year. I plan to start using it today. So
good. It's so nice to see you, Katie. Thank you. I am a big admirer of Katie. She was the driving force behind the Bryant Women's Summit for 20 years, a long time. Yes. And the reason I have a bunch of these is because I spoke at the last Women's Summit and I was going to give a bunch of them away, but we ended up doing it virtually. And Katie and her team literally pivoted overnight to make a physical conference virtual, and they did a fantastic job. She went out with a bang.
So Katie, you are the paragon of being organized and productive, and it's because you take all this so seriously, and that's why you're such a high achiever, and it's great to see you as well. So yeah, so make sure you say sign me up and get on Lisa's email list, and tell us again what the email address is, Lisa.
Lisa at Griffith PS for Productivity Solutions, griffithps.com.
And in the subject line, say, sign me up.
Sign me up. Thanks, Mike, for putting the slide up.
Okay, we have a few more comments here. Rachel says, when you reference the article about Christine Carter and ways to say no.
Yes.
She found it.
Oh, you found it. Good. Yeah. Thanks, Rachel.
All right, so it's up there for everyone to see. Pretty easy to find, no doubt. So take a look at that, everybody, if you want to see some great ways to give a good no. Robin says, thank you so much. Michelle says, thoroughly enjoyed this presentation. Thank you. Kate asked the question that I was curious about myself. Do you play an instrument? So we've learned that yes, Lisa plays piano and a few other things half-ass.
Well, as a musician, I never like to take credit for things I'm not really good at.
Well, your half-ass is probably very proficient.
Oh, thank you, Laurie.
Half-ass, so it's all about how you define half-ass. So we've gotten through the questions. We can take more. We have gone quite a bit of time, but obviously this is a subject that struck a nerve. But I have just a couple of questions of my own. One that we obviously have covered sort of inherently, and is that what you're saying is that people think multitasking is a good thing, but we all know multitasking is a bad thing for the brain because it just makes us crazy and we can't focus, right?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. That's a great question. I hear this all the time, and I see it with my clients all the time, and I'm guilty of it too. Multitasking is a myth. Your brain cannot really focus on more than one thing at a time. Now, I'm not saying that you can't watch TV and fold laundry at the same time, that kind of thing. But if you are doing some concentrated work, yet you're trying to look at emails or answer texts or you're trying to do two things at the same time, that doesn't happen. Your brain doesn't work that way. Your brain can focus on one thing at a time. And when you think you're doing two things at a time, what's happening is your brain is here, and then it switches to here, and then it switches back to here. It's not happening simultaneously. And every time your brain has to switch from one thing to the other and back, it's not an instantaneous switch. It's not like turning a light switch on and then turning it off. It takes your brain a minimum of 7 seconds if what you're concentrating on isn't that difficult. It can take even more time than that. It was a Psychology Today. I can't remember. It's in my planner, actually. There was a study done, and I can't remember where it was, but they did estimate that people lose up to 40% of their productive time when they're trying to multitask, when they're trying to do this and then do this and then do this. Multiply all those, even if it is just 7 seconds each time. If you're doing this and this and this and this multiple times an hour, hundreds of times a day, multiply that times 7. How much time have you lost? So one thing at a time.
Yeah. So kind of sort of as a corollary to that, when you put up the slide about, how does she get it all done? Coffee and wine. So let me just ask you a serious question about that.
Okay.
I know that both of those things, which I enjoy very much, makes me very jittery, and it's very hard to concentrate and to focus when you've had that. So, I want to ask, I know you put it up there as, a lighthearted way of, saying, yeah, let's, it's like Superwoman, but let me just ask you very seriously about caffeine and about wine and what it does to our ability to really, really focus and narrow in on our priorities.
Well, I think
as I'm drinking a cup of coffee right here.
Well, me too. Hello. I think, first of all, it's a very individual response. Everybody's body responds differently, and you have to know what your limits are. If for me, more than 2 cups of coffee a day means I get a little jittery and I can't fall asleep at night. For other people, for my husband, could literally fall asleep with a cup of coffee in his hand. It's everybody's body reacts differently. And the same thing with alcohol. I don't think please believe me, I am the last person to say, don't enjoy a drink at the end of the day, right? And that's kind of the joke. You get the coffee for the beginning of the day and the wine to unwind at the end of the day. But one of the reasons I put that slide up, it was I had kind of an ulterior motive. If you are surviving on stuff like coffee to get you going and alcohol to calm you down, maybe it's time to reevaluate what's going on in your life. And no judgment here, folks. I'm a big coffee drinker. I enjoy my wine. There is no judgment on this. But if you are depending on that kind of stuff to get you through the day because you're exhausted or you're overworked or you're stressed, then it's time to kind of reevaluate. And that kind of all leads into that big, what are my priorities? And am I making a commitment to the stuff that's really important to me? Mm-hmm. So I don't mean that as judgment at all, by the way, but your question is a good one, and everybody's body is going to respond and everybody's brain is going to respond differently to how those substances affect them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know being home, mm-hmm. you sort of, equate with being relaxed, and
mm-hmm.
You're coming home from the busy day, and now you're home and it's time to kick back. But now that we're home all the time, more caffeine to counteract the fact that I need to be more awake, and I'm be relaxing at, I have to combat the feeling that I need to relax at 12 o'clock, at 1 o'clock, and 2 o'clock when I should actually be in high gear. So I've been more, which is not good.
Well, and for those folks who were used to going to an office at the same time every day and having a structure and then coming home, having to be home all the time. And my daughter is one of those people. She was somebody had to go to the office every day, had a structure. And then when she came home at 6 o'clock, the time was hers and she could really unwind. Putting structure around your day right now, especially if you're not used to working from home, is super important. And I got to give another shout out to Julie Morgenstern, because she writes a great blog. And one of her most recent blogs about working from home is a good way to put some structure around your day. If you're working from home and you're not used to doing that, if you're accustomed to going out and having a commute every day, to start your day, go outside, walk around the block, and then come back, and that's the start of your day. And at the end of the day, instead of your evening commute, you close up your computer, you go outside, you walk around the block again. For some people, more strenuous exercise might be appropriate. But the point she's making is try to recreate your day as you had it at the office with the small things that you can do that you can control in your own space. And I love that, to get up, go walk, come back, have your coffee, and then start your day. And I think a lot of people roll out of bed and they pick this up, and the first thing they do is they look at their phone and they get sucked in right away. And what happens is then you're allowing somebody else to dictate how you start your day. When you pull your phone up and you get sucked into answering texts and answering emails, somebody else is dictating how you're starting your day. All right. If you want to start your day that way, fine. But if you just do it by default, so I think to, get up and have a certain routine. And I know Katie McDonald talks about this all the time, having a specific structured routine in the morning to start your day and a specific structured routine in the evening to finish your work day. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. So Katie and I did talk about that on Chamber TV, probably episode number somewhere between 50 and 70, somewhere back there. So we do talk about the routine.
It's an excellent show. It's an excellent webinar. You should watch it. It's good.
Yeah. I think we actually did two separate ones. We did a whole session on morning and we did a whole session on evening routines. Okay, so here's my last question. And then I'm going to let everybody go because everybody is just chomping at the bit to put their priorities out and get started on them. So my last question is about the Google Calendar that you used, and one calendar, one life, one calendar. I was wondering, can you merge your Google out? Can you merge your Microsoft Outlook calendar with a Google Calendar?
I think you can. I wouldn't swear by that 100%. I don't use a lot of Outlook. I have clients who use Outlook exclusively. I think it is possible to sync a Google Calendar with an Outlook calendar, but don't quote me on that. I would have to get some research done and get back to you on that. I know Google Calendar syncs with a lot of calendars. I used Fantastical for a while, which is an Apple specific to Apple products, and it synced with my Google Calendar ultimately. And it syncs with Apple Calendar, the calendar app that comes with every Mac and every iPhone. It will sync with that. Outlook, you may have to go into the settings. It may not be an automatic sync. You may have to go in and ask it to sync, but don't quote me on that. And there are going to be people out there who know a lot more about this than I do. I can certainly find out.
Okay, put it on your list of things. How many minutes do you estimate it will take to get that answer?
I've decided a time first.
It's probably no more than 15 minutes, probably. So,
well, if I can't find it myself with the great Google machine, I have some really smart Microsoft experts who are also professional organizers who I can shoot an email up to and say, hey, do you know if this can be done? And if so, how? So I can find out for you.
No, that's okay. Don't do that on my behalf. I can just easily Google it. So don't add
Laurie,
that.
it was a good question, and I should probably know the answer. So it's important to learn.
But I think you should say, no, I don't know, and you go find out for yourself. So
okay, there you go.
All right, so we've gone 1 hour and 26 minutes. So thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing all of this stuff. And I know people are into it, and we've had so many questions from folks, and this has been a great way to spend the morning, because how we spend our time is how we get things done, and there's no two ways about it. So if you want to be serious about being more productive and achieving all your goals, you got to make sure that you've organized your physical space in your mind to be able to make that happen, and give yourself a fighting chance to get it done, and to be compassionate along the way. So Lisa Griffith from Griffith Productivity Solutions. Enjoy your day. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll be back again soon. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Laurie.